You ever hear one of those stories that sounds like a scene out of a dark comedy? The kind where you laugh, then pause, then realize, oh wait, that really happened? This one was told to me by my old buddy Daniel, and I swear it's the perfect definition of petty revenge done right. Daniel grew up in a tiny rural village in southern France. You know, the kind of place, postcard pretty from the outside, but inside, everyone knows everyone, everyone's related to everyone, and everyone has an opinion about you, especially if you don't quite belong. See, Daniel's parents weren't originally from there. 15 years earlier, they'd moved in, bought a piece of unused farmland from an old farmer, and built a modest little house. Nothing fancy, just a home. But in that village, that was enough to brand them outsiders forever. The audacity, Daniel laughed when he told me. They acted like we'd stolen the land, like my parents had committed some mortal sin just by moving there. And it never ended. The locals sneered at them in shops. Daniel got bullied at school until teachers finally stepped in. His mom got cold shoulders at the market. And his dad fought back in his own way. Once, when the local hunting association tried to intimidate the family, Daniel's father met them at the gate with his .440 Magnum resting casually in his hand. Let's just say the hunters didn't come back. But the worst of the locals was the mayor, a smug, penny-pinching little man who strutted around like he owned the whole town. Daniel told me once, he even tried to run a road straight through our living room. Literally. He wanted to reroute a communal path through our house. His father, of course, lawyered up and shut that down quick, but it became just another battle in an endless war of petty politics. And then came the sewage system. The village council finally decided it was time to drag themselves into the modern age and install a communal sewage system for the old village, the cluster of ancient stone houses tangled together on narrow streets. The outsiders, like Daniel's family, already had septic tanks and running water, but for the villagers, this was big news. Imagine picturesque stone walls, ivy climbing up, little shutters, and then raw sewage trickling down the gutter. It was gross. The new system would fix all that. At first, Daniel's dad was thrilled. Finally, he'd say at dinner, we won't have to step over the mayor's pee every time we walk through town. But then came the kicker. The mayor, Monsieur Pennypincher himself, decided the rules didn't apply to him. While everyone else had to pay their share and hook their houses into the system, he exempted his own place. Too stingy to contribute, too arrogant to care. His toilet still emptied into a pipe that stuck right out of a stone archway on the street. A pipe that dripped his personal waste down carved limestone steps right where kids walked to school. Daniel would drive past, shaking his head. Filthy bastard. Someone should shove a can of expanding foam up that pipe. Let him see what it feels like. It became a running joke. Every time they passed, his father would mutter, foam a hole, like it was some kind of family motto. Now here's where Daniel comes in. He turned 14, got his first little moped, and suddenly he had freedom. Real freedom. One of the first trips he made was to the next town over, to the hardware store. And what did he buy? 4 cans of expanding foam. I felt like James Bond, Daniel told me, grinning. Except instead of a Walther PPK, I had a shopping bag full of insulation foam. That night, he and his best friend snuck out. 2 skinny teenagers in hoodies, hearts pounding, sneakers crunching on gravel as they crept through the village under cover of darkness. The streets were dead quiet, the kind of silence you only get in the countryside. Even the dogs seemed to know something was up. They barked once, then went still. Daniel pointed at the stone arch. There it is, he whispered, the infamous pipe sticking out like a middle finger, dripping waste into the street. His friend held the flashlight. Daniel shook the first can, aimed, and pressed the nozzle. The hiss of foam echoed louder than he expected. They both froze, listening for footsteps. Nothing. Just the slow, sticky fill of the pipe, layer by layer. 1 can. 2. 3. By the 4th, the pipe was packed solid, sealed tighter than a bank vault. But teenage boys rarely stop at mission accomplished. Daniel glanced at his buddy, smirked, and said,
Want to give him a little extra?" They walked around to the mayor's front door. The old wooden frame had gaps in it, perfect for mischief. One by one, they sprayed foam into the cracks, filling every seam until the door looked like it had sprouted mushrooms overnight. The next morning, oh man, word spread fast in a small town. By breakfast, everyone was talking about how the mayor's toilet had backed up, how he'd woken up, gone to do his business, and ended up with an overflowing disaster that flooded the bathroom. And when he panicked and rushed outside to figure out what was wrong, he slipped on his own mess right there on the stone steps in front of his door. "Picture it," Daniel told me, laughing so hard he had tears in his eyes. The almighty mayor, flat on his back, covered in the very thing he made everyone else live with for years. The villagers didn't say who did it. They didn't need to. Everyone knew, and they loved it. For once, the arrogant little man had been humbled. 6 years later, when Daniel finally left the village for good, people were still telling the story. Remember the day the mayor's toilet betrayed him? It had become legend, a permanent entry in the village's folklore. That's the thing about petty revenge. It doesn't change the whole world. It doesn't fix every injustice. But sometimes when someone has been dishing out misery for years, one perfectly timed act of payback tips the scales back just enough. Daniel never told anyone it was him, not his parents, not his siblings, just his best friend who kept the secret too. But you could always see it in his smile when someone brought up the mayor's accident. Now let me say this, don't try this at home. I'm not telling you to sneak out with hardware store supplies and sabotage your local politicians. But isn't there something deeply satisfying about a story where the guy who thinks he's untouchable finally gets hit with consequences? If you're still listening, you're probably like me. You live for stories like this. Real revenge, real drama, told straight. So do me a favor, hit that like button. It tells me to keep sharing these tales. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Subscribe right now. I've got stories lined up that will make you laugh, gasp, and maybe even cheer out loud. I'll leave you with this. Daniel once told me he didn't feel guilty at all. He said, "That man spent years making us miserable. I didn't ruin his life. I just gave him one really bad morning." And honestly, one really bad morning is exactly what a person deserves.